Well, is it possible to bully-proof your kids? Our next guest is Estelle Erasmus. She's an award-winning journalist. Her latest in the New York Times is called How to Bully-Proof Your Child. Estelle, good morning.
Good morning, Elias. Nice to be on the program.
It's fantastic to have you on. And as you start your piece in the New York Times, you tell a story about what happened to your child, your daughter. Why don't you tell us about that starting point and how your look at if it's possible to bully-proof your child started?
Sure. So my daughter was doing a play date, and it was a weekly play date. It was a couple of years ago. She's 10 now, and this was when she was about 6.5. And three little girls were battling over who would wear the one sparkly gown for dress up. And I wasn't aware of it. I was in the kitchen talking with the other parents. But somehow, I don't know how, it ended up my daughter's prize. And the other girls got very angry, and they told the rest, one of the girls told the rest not to play with her, to play with my daughter. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about it. In the car going home, I saw my daughter was a little quiet, and I wasn't sure why. And I said, is everything okay? And then she told me what happened. And she told me that when they were shunning her, she was defending herself and crying, and they kind of taunted her. And she didn't want to go back to the play date. She said, I'm not going back. I don't want to go. And I said, well, listen, these are your friends. You played with them for a long time. I said, so as a journalist, I put my research hat on, and I started looking for answers. And I started Googling how to help your kid, how to help your kid with bullying. And I came across the Psychology Today column of Izzy Coleman, who's a school psychologist, and he's an educator and author of Bullies to Buddies, How to Turn Your Enemies into Friends. And his concept is to treat the person, it's a couple of things, but it was treating the person, insulting you as a friend rather than as an enemy, because my daughter had been yelling back at them and, being mean in turn, and had not to get defensive or upset. And a big part of what he does is role-playing. And so I said, I'm a journalist. I work with words. That's kind of my playground, and that's in my wheelhouse. Yeah. And I thought, okay, that's something I can do. So I started role-playing with my daughter. I said, look, you're going to go back to that play group, and you're going to be able to handle this. And let's practice until you're comfortable. You have another week before you see them again. Let's do this. And she agreed, and it really worked well.
So the key here was to sort of let it slide off your back and not, fight back? What would be the right term there?
No, actually, what I wanted to do was empower her. This is in no means doing something passively, because what she did is, I said to her, if they don't want to play with you, say very politely, okay, it's a free country. If you don't want to play with me, that's okay. Very calmly, very politely. I said, and then find something else to do, color or do something like that. So we practiced, and we took turns. So at first she was the one who was being bullied, and I was the bully, and I was saying, and I used the word bully, they were teasing, they were being mean. I said, you're stupid. We don't want to play with you. We don't like you. And first she did it. She responded, that's so mean. You're so mean to me. I don't like you. And we just kept going. And then I said, okay, now you be the bully to me. And so she pretended, oh, I don't like you. You're stupid. And I said, well, no, I'm not. I'm not stupid. You're stupid. And then I said, all right, now we're going to try it the other way. She said, we don't like you. You're stupid. And I said, okay, it's a free country. You don't have to play with me. That's okay.
But Estelle, go ahead, Estelle.
And we practiced until she was calm and she realized she had options. See, I think when kids get teased or bullied, they don't feel they have options. That was my personal experience of it.
But
I was bullied in middle school.
How does
when
it?
I was in middle school. I was bullied.
Estelle, how does it change if it's not just the teasing, but your child's getting a punch in the face from a bully?
No, that's different. Yeah. That's different. That's extreme. That's intimidation, and that is different. different with intimidation, with extreme, violence. This is not what we're talking about here. And of course, adults would need to intervene in any kind of situation like that.
Okay.
But in general, life is a series of power plays. You know this in the office. You know this driving to work. You know this anywhere. And you have to be able to handle it. And so teaching a child that you're not going to jump in, it wouldn't serve her if I jumped in and helicoptered with the parents after the fact. Oh, your kid picked on my daughter last week. How are we going to figure this out? Let's get all the girls together. It just didn't. It wasn't going to work. I thought if I can help her to deal with this herself, I'm giving her tools for life.
Estelle, you make a point of in your article about negative words and not punishing kids for saying negative words. What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes people are very sensitive to just like, we don't want to sit with you right now. We don't want to sit with you. No, you can't play this game with us. And they're going to run to tell the teacher, or they're going to run to, make a big deal about it. It's like the idea is that people can say what they need to say. If you're going to be excluded from a party, we're not having you at the party. Okay, that's your choice. You can't fight with people for having their opinions. That's not talking about extreme intimidation and extreme racism and things like that. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about, being excluded. I'm talking about kids being teased and insulted.
Estelle Erasmus is an award-winning journalist. Her latest in the New York Times is called How to Bully-Proof Your Child. Estelle, and by the way, if you add an S between Estelle and Erasmus, you'll find her on Twitter as well. Thanks for the time, Estelle.
Thank you. Great being on the program.
All right. And I also want to point out, as we're doing this interview, I'm getting a lot of text messages. It's so funny because I got one text message from a listener that says, your guest daughter did not experience bullying. She experienced an argument with friends. And then one other person saying, Elias, that is true bullying. So it's so funny how those different perspectives come in.